del departamento dijo gente.
Beep, beep. What is up, ninjas? My name is Sam World and welcome. Now, this is a first for me. I've seen other people out there remaking tracks and putting the project files up for sale, so I thought, why not give it a shot? I think I could do a little bit of a better job, and also thought it'd be a nice way to just pass the afternoon. But the track I've chosen to do is going to be the Chris Lake 400. Now, if you guys are interested in the project file for educational purposes, you can find it over at evilsounds.com. All the samples that I've used obviously are going to be mine. They're going to be from the Deceiver Volume 1 through 4 series, as well as the presets. They're going to be there for you guys to save and utilize in your own way or form. So if you were like, I want to use that sound from that one track, this is a great way to do it. Other than that, let's get started with this video. The first thing we can talk about in this track is going to be the bass line. The bass line is going to be what I like to call a donk bass line, and it's usually going to be created utilizing the most important part of a donk bassline, which is going to be an envelope routed to the coarse pitch of your oscillator. So pretty much what's going to happen is we're going to put this guy here to the coarse, as you can see, and the bass is going to sound like this. Let's take off that compressor. And notice as I bring this decay up, it knocks. So when creating these kind of bass lines, utilizing a sine wave, putting this envelope is the most important thing. From there, obviously getting your ADSR values right. No sustain and decay is the key. From there, we have a low pass. And then from there, we have this epic heavy distortion from the tube. The important thing is not to get carried away with it, because if you overdo it, you're gonna sound like those memes that where people put nasty 808s. From there, the programming from there is simple. We have a low pass filter again to bring back some of the dynamics, because as some of you guys know, when you saturate stuff, there is a compression effect and you kill dynamics, which is good and bad. It just depends. But for this, we do want this bass to have that vibe. From there, I'm gonna go back to this envelope and ease up on that decay so it sounds coherent. We're gonna lower this drive so we don't have the bass overly, distorting. Okay, and there we go. Now the MIDI of the bass is gonna look something like this. Now I don't know if this is exact, but again, we try to capture the vibe of Chris Lake 400. Again, what you're gonna see here, we have F up an octave, which is a pretty cool trick to utilize for yourself whenever you're making your own basses. If you wanna add groove, funk, you wanna do some trance gallops. I call this a horse, because it feels like I'm riding one. Boom, 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 boom. It can also be a bouncy house. The bass throughout the song is obviously going to be the removal of it, doing the breaks, and then it comes back in for the drop, right? Which is something that every tech house DJ does. But again, the point of it is to create contrast and also not to have bass all the time, because if you have bass all the time, then you're not going to know a world where there is no bass. And if there is no bass, you're not going to feel how good bass is, because you're always feeling how good it is. So there's no bass. So then you don't know what it feels like to not have. You get my point. Now let's talk about the vocals, because we didn't rip them out of the master. That would not be right. So we actually hired someone on Fiverr by the name of Maria Esnos here to do a professional voiceover. We just showed them what we wanted for like the remake and stuff, and she gladly did it. And it's so good.
Un portavoz del departamento dijo gente.
Now the vocal is used very uniquely throughout the song, obviously, and as you can see, it does really cool stuff. Like
un portavoz del 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 departamento dijo gente.
Now obviously she didn't record herself going portavoz. She gave us one file, and then from there we're just manipulating it. So this one's pitched down -2 just to get us as close to the original and whatnot. But from there is a bit of processing, multi-band compression.
Un portavoz del departamento dijo gente.
Which you can find in Ableton. It's actually a preset. From there, you can utilize an EQ8 to get rid of some of that low meat that you sense. It's like me talking like that. There's a lot of mid-lows that occur when you're too close to the mic. From there, we have a saturator, which is going to automate for these sections, just to increase the volume and make it sound a little dirtier. So now it's like a drum fill.
Un portavoz del departamento dijo gente.
So these are things I feel like make Chris Lake, like layering the vocal with the snare build. Like from there we have the And I didn't know what this used to be called. In fact, I thought I invented it for a second until someone put me in check, which is fine. I gotta be put in check, you know, or else I will never get better. But it's called the dub delay. And the idea is that we're utilizing, again, 116, heavy amounts of feedback. And again, we are gonna have the EQ like so to get that really cool dub effect. Now, if we play it from here. But that's the dub delay. And one little bonus tip for you guys is you can also automate that thing. As you can see, the cool down to do some cool effects. So if you checked out my song In the Jungle, which you can find on Spotify, I did this effect for it in the break where, you know, you're now approaching the zone of no return. Check it out, guys. I have new songs out. Now let's talk about the drums. Now the drums are not exact, but they're going to be around the same ballpark, and that is the goal with the remake that we're doing here. It doesn't have to be exact. We're just learning, but I can also show you guys some really cool tips to achieve similar stuff. Personally, me, I'm a MIDI man, and I always recommend people use MIDI. You have access to velocity. You have access to a little bit of randomization if needed. Now we're not doing none of this fancy stuff for this thing. In fact, all we're really using the sampler and simpler for is going to be for this little cool feature here. When we go from classic to one shot, we can apply a fade out and shorten the kick. Now, the reason we do this, and this is from a sound designer, is that it's a lot easier to push a sound that isn't dynamically up to the biggest in amplitude, if that makes sense. It's just not loud all the time. And you can saturate that a lot better than the blob, as I would say, because if I do this and push this, Space 92 better watch his back because I'm coming. However, if I shorten this, and we can't push it that hard, but you get my point here. You can see that we can actually get a little bit more squeeze out of this. Now, again, maybe the fade out could be a little more, yeah. The clap, again, nothing too crazy happening with it. Just shorten with the simpler. And from there, literally, it's just a basic clap from a deceiver pack. Now, it's common sense that it might feel for some of us. I know some people are starting out and whatnot, so it's good to kind of tell them. So again, you have the 909 open hat, which is going to be one of the most iconic open hats. It's used in techno, it's used in tech house, it's used in disco. Like, literally, it sounds like this. And we can do a lot with it. Number one, we can shorten it to make it sound like this. We can elongate it. So for us, we're going to do this. Again, utilizing the fade out and one shot mode in the simpler. From there, this EQ. From there, we're going to have a close hat, which again is going to be a 909 variant inspired by the 909. Then from there, we're going to have this drum loop. Now, again, this doesn't mean this is what Chris Lake did, but we decided to bring in this loop from the, I believe it's going to be a deceiver pack, which is going to be here, which we are over processing. Now, when we interviewed Sid on In the Dojo, he did tell us that he liked to put loops for texture. So we thought, why not do that? But instead of putting any EQ to chop off all of the mids and the mid highs, why not use it as sort of like a form of parallel compression, which is the idea of you grab your open hat and your close hat and you over compress them in order to bring up some of that release from the cymbals up and get this sort of sound to it. So, but then you're going to get this, which is going to look like. And of course, a ride. From there, it's cool because the tambourine changes, it looks like, from the ride to the tambourine. And that's good because it adds a lot of contrast. And then, of course, the vocal, the beautiful Maria Esnes comes back in. From here, we're going to utilize acoustic snare from my good friend Noah over at Sounds Good, which is going to look like this. Process like so. This reverb, the new hybrid reverb from Ableton, gives it a lot of life. This is what makes it sound white. And it's now, usually with reverb, whenever there's drums, I always tell people if you're going to put reverb on drums, you're better off with ambience one. They stick very close to the drum. They don't sound like but that's the idea here. From there, there's going to be this cool drum fill. Again, just utilizing here an auto pan, a shifter to make it wide and delay. Now for the buildups, we decided to utilize, I believe it's going to be an evolution of sound. Now for the buildups, I believe we utilized an evolution of sound snare, snare number 4, which we're going to be pretty much using like so.
Un portavoz del departamento dijo gente.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. You know, going up, going down. So that's all that's going on. Now, usually, if you want to do these, all you really need, like I said, is a sine and just know how to utilize a bit of sound design. So for example, here we have this sound. We modulate the rate. Goes up on a saw. You can also see it's routed to the pitch, this LFO here. The filter. And noise. And some heavy amounts of distortion, which is taking it off. Yeah, you can also increase the resonance to get really cool, like sort of self-resonation. And I'm pretty sure as you guys hear that, you're going like, oh shit, sounds like a lot of the sounds Chris Lake and Chris Lorenzo like to use. Yeah, those are valid techniques. Distortion, high resonance before distortion. And finally, of course, the Ableton Bit Crusher or Redux. That. Now, the main sound that changes rhythms a lot, which I think is really cool. Like, I mean, come on, that's why Chris Lake is Chris Lake. It's actually, again, going to be it's going to be a square this time, which is going to be an LFO routed here. You have the rate moving fast in envelope mode, which means it doesn't loop. So we put it in envelope mode so it always shoots off and it doesn't loop back. Okay, some distortion and that's about it. And then from there we have this pattern. But again, this is how you create these sort of patterns, which are really cool, utilizing simple waveforms. From there is a grain delay, which is going to get automated, sort of like a slap delay, and then reverb automating there as well. And the pattern changes where we get like these octave jumps. And there we have a saw that's actually pretty basic. What's going to give it this sound is just going to be a filter. Now, filter has been known to give character, guys. That's why we utilize them, because if we get rid of it, it sounds like that. But with the filter, pretty much shaving off a little bit of the highs, some drive, and more distortion, we get that vibe. Very raw. Those are going to be some of the cool things about the track. Now, guys, if you guys are interested in this project file, again, for educational purposes, you can find it over at evilsounds.com. All the samples are going to be from Evolution of Sound. So if you want to save them, if you don't have access to these packs and you just want to use this to make your own version of this kind of track in your own style, then by all means, it's going to be there. You can save all the presets as well if you want. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this shines a little bit of light on the stuff going on. It's not too complicated, but the idea, the way it's complicated is someone had to think of creating this, and that's where the value is. I feel like Chris Lake and these guys just making amazing music, keeping it simple but still tasteful, which is the biggest thing. I think that's the most complex that as it gets. Anybody can put a bunch of sounds and fill up a track. I think it's the way you do it, which really, and the ideas that really set you apart. Other than that, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, like I said before, and you guys have a great rest of your day.